What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. I'm in my kitchen for some reason this morning and I'm just editing this video that you are about to see. What I will ask you lot to do is hit that subscribe button. We're only 25 people away from 1,000, which would be unbelievable for us. All we need to do is just keep watching the videos now to get our watch time up. But yeah, keep on enjoying the content and enjoy this video in a bit.
Back to episode 4 of Breaking Barriers, and this week we have an amazing guest on, none other than Alison Bender. Alison, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're really excited to have Alison on. She's been here, there and everywhere, and she was at Liverpool's trophy presentation, so I will be asking about that later on. But first off, Alison, we'll just have sort of a brief background on your career so far. So where did it all start for you?
Yeah, I'm glad you said so far, because I like to think that my career is still going, even though at the moment it feels like it's kind of ending. I think it's a really weird time, obviously with COVID and with lockdown. But yeah, it started a really long time ago now. I mean, I don't feel this old, to be fair, but 20 years ago, I first started out my career. I actually started out behind the scenes. So I worked for a newsroom and I was a news assistant, which is basically a runner, lowest rung of the ladder, making teas and coffees, but also doing editing and script writing, running the news desk, all that kind of thing. I did that for a really long time, actually about 6 years, really sort of getting the background in. And then I started to think I really wanted to be front of camera. But back then, to be honest, there weren't that many opportunities for me and it was really hard. And I sort of set myself a 1-year experiment to try and get the other side of the camera. And I thought if it doesn't work out for me, then I'll go back to the producing. And within that time, I did lots of various different jobs that I probably won't go into. So it takes a long time. But I guess you could say my big break was I went to run Real Madrid television out in Spain. They wanted someone who had production background, so it was perfect because I'd been producing, but they wanted someone that could present as well. So I went out there doing both basically. And it was crazy because I literally had a phone call. I had a week to pack my bags. I spoke no Spanish. They said, will you come and do this? And I had to make up my mind. I was renting a flat at the time, so I had to tell my flatmate. So it was one of the best decisions of my life, and it started my football career. I then went on to work for Chelsea TV. I'm a Chelsea fan, so that was a proud moment. I went to work for Sky Sports News. ITV hired me as their Europa League presenter and African Cup of Nations. And a little bit later down my career, I started working for ESPN in America, which was another big deal for me because I think in America, the voice of a woman speaking about football is taken a lot more seriously. And that really, really helped me for sure in my career, gave me a lot of confidence. So those are kind of the highlights, but I did do a few other bits and pieces in between. I've been doing a lot of radio and some writing lately as well.
You've just about been everywhere in the last 20 years. And so tell us a little bit more about as a freelancer and as women as well. I mean, just being a freelancer alone is kind of tough because you never really know where you're getting your next job. But how do you deal with that, with added stress of being a woman in a male-dominated sort of?
I have something that I've always done, and it's the biggest piece of advice I give anyone. But I basically have my bread and butter job, the one that pays the bills, and then I have something that challenges me. And I try and have like one new thing that challenges me each season, but I do try and keep the bread and butter stuff going. So even though I say I'm freelance, I usually try and get a contract each season. So I'll approach a company or they'll approach me and we'll say, I will work, say 1 or 2 days a week for them. And even if it's something that you can kind of do standing on your head, I think it's so important because, the really exciting jobs, they genuinely don't come around that often. They really don't. And if you just relied on them, you'd be scratching around to pay rent and mortgages and you'd be depressed and you wouldn't be able to hold it down. So I always say, try and have that, even if it's, whether it's local newspaper, local radio, something that might not seem so glamorous. Just always keep that. And that's what I've always kind of had running along parallel. And then each season I kind of try and challenge myself and get something that kind of excites me or pushes me out of my comfort zone. And that's how I've managed it. But it is tricky. And I think you have to be very thick-skinned. You have to realize in the moments of pause, one of the other bits of advice I'd say is in those pause moments, always kind of get everything together, get your show reel together, get your CV together, because suddenly if you are offered an opportunity and you haven't got that stuff, you'll miss out on it. And I also think that the lows are really important as well, to prepare you for the highs, because actually, you can't get the best jobs in the world if you're always working. So sometimes you do need a little bit of a break to be available. If you look at some of the most incredible presenters out there, if they're working all the time and a job comes along, they simply can't do it. So, you have to kind of be embrace the moments of pause, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, so last time out we had Kate and Lindsay from the Offside Rule, and they have Kate has 2 kids of her own. How have you found dealing with it as a mum? What sort of adaptations have you had to make?
So many. My life changed more than I could ever have imagined. The thing about me is I was a real career girl, and I did always want family, but I never really thought too much about it. I thought it would just kind of come at some point. And then before I knew it, I was like coming towards 40, and I thought, crikey, like, how has this happened? I suppose, I better think about having children, because otherwise I'm going to leave it too late, basically. So it kind of came at a really bad time for me, I suppose you could say, even though it was a choice, because I just started to really feel like I belonged in the football family. So when I did take a bit of time off, it was a real massive struggle for me, to be honest. I didn't want to take any time off. It is hard because I think so much is happening to your body. I actually do think you do need a year, in all honesty, to get used to all those changes. And I think our industry doesn't really allow you that time. So it is tough. And, there's various things. I can go into one or two of them. But breastfeeding was a big one for me, because I wanted to breastfeed. I was able to breastfeed. But that meant that if I was going to a football game, and I remember going to a Champions League game at the Bernabeu, I had to bring my electric pump with me, and I had to find a place to express my milk where no one was looking. And, I've got Gary Neville to my right, and I've got Jeff Shreves to my left, and, the toilets were full, and, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And my boobs are swelling up to my neck. And, there are challenges that no one really talks about, but these are kind of things you have to do if you're going to be a working mum. And it has been crazy, some of the things I didn't expect. But I just had to do them, I suppose.
And so do you feel as, like you mentioned briefly, the representation for women in the industry, do you feel as if you as a working mum and as a freelancer are getting enough, and whether more can be done for women?
Yeah, I definitely think it's one of the reasons why as I'm a little bit older now, I think I'm trying to kind of help younger women getting into the industry by highlighting some of these things, because I think there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that nobody really knows about. And often, a lot of the senior figures within football industry are men, and I don't want to discriminate against men at all, because they try and be as understanding as they possibly can be. But there are certain things that you might not necessarily want to speak to a man about. There's been some really positive steps. For example, Football Writers Association appointing Carrie Brown as chairwoman, the first woman in that position, is absolutely massive. Carrie's brilliant. I've known her throughout my whole career. She knows exactly what women go through and how hard it is. And she's been really helpful, even things through lockdown, through, the pandemic. She's been reaching out to freelancers, making sure everyone's okay. And to feel that you've got someone kind of on your side, like a little bit of a team, I think that's really important. And women in football, of course, you'll know how good they've been. When I first started out, we didn't have that. And then I suddenly found myself in a room full of women, and I was like, wow, there's this many women that work in football. And to be able to just chat about our experiences, and, in all honesty, I never wanted being a woman to get in the way. I was like, I feel really privileged to do this job. I love it. I'm not going to sort of moan about the fact that I'm a woman, because, it is a man's game, in many ways. But I just think having those little bits of help around and support can be so important when you're feeling a bit low or alone.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that, it's not, you didn't think that there was as many women working in sport as there is. What sort of challenges have you faced, particularly as a woman? And of course, mentioning earlier that in America you found that being a woman was a little bit easier, your voice was heard. Do you think that is starting to change now, or do you think it's still quite a lot of work to do?
Yeah, there's always work to do. It's definitely changing for the better, for sure. I think one of the hardest things, and not so many girls speak about this, but I've started speaking about it, is when you're a journalist, you need to make contacts with footballers. That's the way that it is. Footballers and managers, it's all about contacts. And I used to find in the very early days, any time I was seen giving my phone number to a footballer or taking a phone number, which you have to do in this industry, people were looking at me like, oh, why is she taking his number? And there were things around, you heard at the football ground, oh, who's she shagging? Stuff like that. And you just have to kind of suck it up and get on with it. But it just felt really bad that, you think, you're trying to do your job and someone really thinks that of you. I found that really sad. And I came up with a way, and basically any time a footballer asked for my number, because you couldn't tell whether they were being professional or whether they were flirting, to be honest with you, so I would always say, hey, listen, I'll take your number. I'd love to have your number, but I am a journalist and I will be asking you for interviews. And sometimes that just put them off, and that was it. And that made me kind of sad, because I was like, you know.
And so let's talk about the book now, because that's one thing I really wanted to focus on. I'm quite excited about it. You've sort of taken all your experiences and everything you've gone through, and you're having this book for younger women in the generation. How much do you think is important that we should be doing things like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really hard thing of writing an autobiography, because you always feel like your career is progressing and it never really feels like the right time. And so I suppose you could say COVID really helped me, because I had a little bit of a pause and a space where I was able to kind of finish it off, and it's pretty much done now. And I'd forgotten how much I'd learned along the way, and I kind of wish that someone, I almost wanted to call it the things I wish they told me growing up, because there was so much that I learned the hard way. And I was like, if only someone had told me this. And then I just thought, well, why don't I do it? And it's, it's my memoirs, it's a story, it's, all the crazy jobs that I've done along the way, and, all the doors that closed in my face and everything. And it's all about not giving up. But there's quite a few life lessons along the way that might sound like cliches if you just read them in a book of quotes. But I'm sort of saying, that the one door closes and then another opens might sound cheesy, but, I'll give you the perfect example. I was working for Premier League. It was the best job of my life. I loved it. And I walked into my boss's office after I'd come back from having my baby, and I was like, I'm really excited about next season. What shows am I going to be hosting? And he basically said, I'm sorry, Alison, we're not renewing your contract. And I was absolutely floored. I wasn't expecting it at all, especially, I'd just come back from kids. I was like, how can this happen? And I was devastated. I went home, I cried. But then the very next job I got after that, when I was able to kind of pause and reflect, was my job for ESPN, which was the best job I've ever had in my life. And I can't tell people enough, like, no matter how hard it might seem when when a contract ends or when a job finishes, like, you just don't know what's going to come next. And, they were the company that sent me to the World Cup. They sent me to the Euros. They flew me to LA to host shows. Like, I had the best time of my life with them. And to think, if I'd had my contract renewed at Premier League, I just wouldn't have had that job. So it's got a lot of stories like that in it, of encouragement, I suppose. I feel really sad to think that there are some people out there who are being put off their dreams, saying they can't do it, they're not good enough, whatever. And I don't believe that anyone's not good enough, actually. I think that you can find your own niche if you work hard enough and you focus yourself in the right direction. I actually think why shouldn't you be good enough? I think that nobody's a natural, really. A lot of people work at it. And if you focus yourself in the right direction and choose what's right for you, then, I think you can achieve anything you want.
Yeah, and as we're coming towards the end, I thought I'd sneak this one in. You were spotted and you tweeted about the Liverpool trophy celebrations. What was that like? And how much does that rank in terms of some of the best places that you've been at, especially behind closed doors in this situation?
I'll tell you what, Chris, it was one of the most incredible things of my whole career, I have to say. Just because it felt so special, the fact that, 300 people were allowed in that stadium, and I was one of them, it felt massive. I've been at Leicester's trophy celebrations as well, and I have to say that was up there too. When Bocelli was singing Nessun Dorma, that was just goosebumps moment. I was kind of looking around, seeing grown men crying. And I did feel really sad, actually, at Anfield, that I would have loved to have seen the look on the fans' faces at that moment in the trophy lift. And you look around, and obviously it was an empty stadium. The cop just looked so weird. But they did a really good job, Premier League, actually, because they made such a racket for that trophy lift. I mean, it was literally, hairs on my body were just standing up on end, because there was ticker tape flying everywhere. And I learned later, actually, that each piece of ticker tape had a special message from a Liverpool fan on, which I thought was really useful. Oh, wow. And I caught a few and read them, and you kind of got a sense that, okay, the fans are not here in physically, but they're here in their vibe, in spirit. And obviously Liverpool is a very spiritual club for so many reasons. And yeah, to see Jordan Henderson, the journey he's been on, I got to interview him afterwards and interview Klopp as well. And it was crazy. It was just brilliant. It was one of the most incredible experiences. But yeah, as I say, just so weird to not have fans there. That will always be, a bit of a regret, I suppose. But, at some point they will go and celebrate it, as Jurgen Klopp says, when the time is right.
Oh, what an amazing way to end the season. What would you say, if you were looking up next season, what kind of things are you expecting for yourself, and just in general, what are the future plans? Well,
I'm really excited about next season. Hopefully, because my book will have, hopefully it's going to take a while to come out. It's probably like 6 to 9 months away at least. But yeah, my book will come out, and I'm starting to do a lot of little projects that are surrounding my book. So my book is basically all about, you know, nobody's a natural. It's all about hard work and determination and grit. And I'm doing a series, like a mini series of podcasts and Zoom interviews with people that I know in the industry, with the same title, basically, how grit and determination has helped them to succeed, and how sometimes hard work is better than raw talent. So I've got a documentary coming out about the real character behind the footballer as well. And so looking at some of the footballers who weren't necessarily the greatest, but worked really hard behind the scenes to become the greatest. So I think, obviously, I would love some presenting to come my way as well, but I'm sort of using this time to start, I guess, creating my own kind of new thing surrounding my book and surrounding this idea, and using all my experience to sort of launch it, really. So yeah, watch this space. Do you know what? I'm still working on a book title. I've written the whole book, and I've played around with about 100 titles, but at the moment I'm going with Not a Natural, but we'll see. So any suggestions, fire them my way.
Yeah, leave them in the comments section. But anyway, yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Alison. It's been a real pleasure having you on. Where can we find you? Where can we find you on social medias and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I'm on @AliBenderTV, TV, my unfortunate name, which the trolls remind me of often on social media. And it's the same on Instagram and Twitter as well. And I do tweet a lot. And I'm going to be, like I say, I'm going to be doing lots of these like mini series. I'm going to be interviewing some really great presenters who are friends of mine, and they're going to talk about their journeys as well. Much the same as what you're doing, actually, but I'll be releasing them as sort of IGTV on my Instagram. So yeah, follow me and keep up to date. And yeah. Nice to see you.
Yeah, keep up with all the stuff, Alison. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching at home. This is episode 4, so there will be plenty more coming your way. Coming soon, Nazar, isn't there? What sort of people have we got lined up? Do you know?
Well, we've definitely got Kate and Lindsay, then we've got Kate Mason from Sky Sports, we've got Reshman potentially. We've got a whole list of amazing women, and I'm very, very excited to reach out to.
Exactly. And yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel. At this present moment, we're on 447 subscribers. We probably will have got more than that by the time this goes out. But yeah, make sure you subscribe. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.